I feel like everyone I talk to is in one of three stages. They're either just about to design a new website, they are in the middle of designing a new website, a process that's invariably taking months, by the way, or they've just launched with great fanfare their brand new website. They're always in one of these three positions. And on one hand, I do kind of get it. I think your website is important. It's a big part of your marketing mix. But on the other hand, it is part of a mix. It's one tool out of many that you have to attract new traffic and turn that traffic into leads and turn those leads into customers. But I think websites get a disproportionate amount of attention because they're so visible. Um, and this is a problem because the time that organizations are spending on the fifth redesign in the last 2 years is time they could be spending on other things. So with that in mind, I've put together a short presentation, three reasons why your website is less important than you think. And I'll quickly run through each of the three reasons and then go in depth on each of them. First, your audience isn't on your website. They're out all over the place. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to fixate on your website when lots of people who could turn into your customers aren't on it in the first place. Two, it's kind of related. Your website is just one part of the customer journey. Journey is what that says. Like I said before, there's content people see before they get to your website, and there's content they see after they get to your website. But if all you're doing is tinkering with your website over and over again, you're not optimizing this stuff before and after. Next, lots of redesigns actually change nothing. They're just cosmetic. So, so while it feels like you're working, you're actually not really moving the needle. So, I'll now get started on the specifics and more detail on each of these 3 points. Okay, so the first reason I want to talk through is this one. Your audience isn't on your website. Your audience is all over the place, especially people who haven't become leads yet. They're on LinkedIn, browsing social media feeds, LinkedIn and other social media feeds. They're reading the news. They're going to conferences. They're living their lives, and your website is probably not part of their life. So if you're spending huge amounts of time and energy optimizing your website, that's time and energy you're not spending optimizing the content that's in front of people who haven't gone to your website. And that's, by definition, most people. So, sort of a micro example of this is when companies get really fixated on their blog and getting the perfect blog. But most people aren't on your blog. Most people are not interested in going to your website and reading blogs. Even if they're interested in the topic, they're going to be much more receptive to that content and those topics when they see them somewhere where they already are, such as their social media feeds or sent to them by a colleague or, again, at a conference. There's a million other places where people are consuming content, and your website is not one of them. So, what I often see is organizations producing, really fancy, really nice websites, cost a ton of money, take a ton of time, and then the content that's out there in the wild is mediocre at best. But that's where people are. That's where your potential audience is. So it often would make more sense to spend your time and energy getting that content that's out in the wild really dialed in and really speaking to your audience rather than perfecting your website. So just remember this: no matter how high your website's traffic is, it is only a tiny portion of the total number of people who might be interested in what you have to sell. So, so meet them where they are rather than make the perfect website for that tiny portion of people. So here's the second reason why your website is less important than you might think. And it's related to the other reason that I covered. Your website is just one part of the customer journey. You have traffic that comes to your website, and then ideally a lot of that traffic turns into leads. And what happens next? Do they get emails? Do they get called by a salesperson? Do they get retargeting ads? What happens in that space between when someone becomes a lead and when someone becomes a paying customer? There's a lot of stuff you could create. You could create content to help support salespeople. You could create case studies to get in front of people to help them with their buying decision. You could create competitor comparison battle cards. You can create video. There's a huge amount of opportunity in that lead to paying customer journey. But like everything, it takes time and energy. If you're spending that time and energy on the 15th website redesign in the last 3 years, or whatever it is, there's an opportunity cost. You're not optimizing that bit between when they become leads and when they become paying customers. And that means people are less likely to become paying customers. And they're also going to take longer to become paying customers because they have to seek, even if they're close to being ready to buy, if you're making them seek out the information they need themselves, that's going to take time because people are busy. So you have to weigh this up when you're embarking on another website redesign. Is a new website truly going to give you the bang for your buck compared to optimizing that journey between when someone becomes a lead and when they become a paying customer? Because if you've redesigned your website a million times in the last couple of years and you have barely touched that space after they become a lead, then you're probably better off spending that time and energy optimizing that space. The practical problem here is that stuff is much harder for for people, especially executives, to see, which I think cuts to the problem of why websites get redesigned so often anyway. But I think you can make a really strong case for it, especially if you've been doing nothing but website redesigns for years. Here's the last reason that your website redesign is less important than you think. Lots of redesigns actually change nothing. I've been calling these redesigns, and I've been doing that quite deliberately because that's usually what a website redesign is. I see a lot of organizations pat themselves on the back launching their brand new website, and it looks different for sure. There might be some, to be structured differently. Different graphics, different design, all that stuff. But the copy on the website is fundamentally the same. The words might be different, but the things that it's talking about are the same. The positioning's the same. The benefit statements are the same. The audience is pretty much the same. So you go through this huge process, and I can't emphasize this enough. Especially in a medium to large size organization, the process to redesign a website is Herculean. It requires a huge amount of effort. There's a whole lot of consultation. There's drafts and redrafts and wireframes and this, that, and the other. And if you go through all of that and your end result is fundamentally at its core the same thing that you had before, that's a huge amount of time and money that you essentially just lit on fire. Because you haven't actually changed anything. You've changed the look, but but you haven't changed the fundamental message and benefit that you're communicating. So if this is what you're going to end up doing, you may as well leave the website as is and focus your energy somewhere else. I'll finish this up on a more positive note. I'll give some tips for what I think you could consider doing instead of another website redesign. So, number one, create content for where your audience is. Rather than make the perfect website or try to make the perfect website by redesigning your site again, do some research to figure out where your audience is consuming content. Where are they hanging out? Where are they talking to each other? Where can you find them? And then create content that's optimized for that space. If it's LinkedIn, you can make LinkedIn posts. Don't put stuff on your website and link to it from LinkedIn, because that's, again, your audience. If your audience is on LinkedIn, create the content for LinkedIn. I can't emphasize that enough. And it goes for, if you have a huge email list, create really great emails that really provide value. There's a million examples. If your audience often communicates to you in a face-to-face way, they spend a lot of time with salespeople. Create stuff to help those salespeople. It's all about creating content for where your audience is. Number two, focus on the before and after. Again, this is kind of a reframe, but I think you just need to really recognize that if your purchase funnel is a funnel with people at the top being completely unaware and people at the bottom being ready to buy, your website is just a big tool in the middle of that funnel. But there's lots of stuff that comes before people go to the website, and there's lots of stuff that comes after they go to the website. You might be able to get a lot more value out of your existing website by just making some tweaks to how people get there and who gets there, so that more qualified buyers are going to your website in the first place. And the same goes for after they give you their contact details. If you get better at communicating with your existing leads, you may not need a brand new website to do that, to get more or better leads. You may be able to take the leads you have and make them better qualified after they've given their details. So look at the whole picture rather than just the one big bit that you can see. Last one, if you redesign everything. Like I've said a few times now, it's a lot of time and effort and energy to redesign a website. So get the most out of it by really going deep and, looking at your positioning, looking at your audience. Are you going after the right audience? Could you be more niche? Could you be more targeted? Could you be less? Could you be more broad? Who's actually buying your product and why do they buy it? Do that research and then put the results of that research on your website. Don't just, I do value design. I think it has a lot of value, but like anything, it shouldn't be the only thing that you tweak. If you're doing such a big project, you should really do it from the ground up. So look at your messaging, your positioning, your audience, your offers, your pricing even. A website is so big that it is worth doing it right. And that's about it. So think about these three things. Create content for where your audience is. Focus on the before and after. And if you redesign everything. Or consider not doing it at all. That's all I have about that. Bye.